And we're back to activating mornings this morning. The time is 8:45 in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we have this topic that we have a lot of opposing views on.
Do we have opposing views? No. This is when you said tricky in the beginning, I did oppose the tricky part, but then discussing it with other people or listening to different sides, it is a little bit tricky. So in summary, right? The Jews were seeking refuge. They were also called Israelites. Were seeking refuge within Palestine. And I think I also read that they wanted to colonize, but they were refused that opportunity. So they decided to purchase land individually, and then it just grew. That's what I read somewhere.
In my opinion, they did colonize. Well, that's my
they
opinion
wanted to do
because
it like
they
collectively.
took over it. They took over Palestinian land.
Who are you talking about?
Israel.
Israelites, right?
No, I think we have this slightly wrong. And as I went back in history, Britain, during its colonial era and its interests, Suez Canal, oil, and the destruction of the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire, divided up the place badly and didn't follow through.
No, before all of that. I was referring to before all of that.
Yes.
Right. When they first went, they wanted to do it collectively, but they were denied.
No. Before that, there were only about 6% of Jews really living in what was called Palestine, and the majority of people were Palestinians, were Arab and so forth. And notwithstanding what we might have read in the Bible and all this other stuff, and so the changes over hundreds and thousands of years took place through the Romans, through the this, that, and the other.
So a quick call.
Hold a second there, right? Hello, good morning.
Hey, morning, Christal.
Morning. I'm good. What's up?
Morning, Ari. Good morning, Doc.
Morning.
I just wanted to throw a perspective in because I'm hearing Doc, and I'm going to avoid the discussion of Israelites versus Israelis, because I hear even Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, referring to King David making Jerusalem capital. I am sure that those people and these people
are the same people. Mm-hmm.
But I'm not even going there yet. But I heard Ari referring to the goal of Hamas, or the state goal of Hamas. Now, unfortunately, I've been listening and following a lot of the discussion, and because Israel, which is backed by the West, has dominated the media, all of our perspectives are Israeli bias, because the media, which backs Israel unreservedly, no matter what Israel does, is what we've been getting our information from.
Let me be clear, you're not doing that, huh?
Hello? You know something?
I think he's speaking generally about mass media.
Because I was going to comment on that as well.
But I do. I mean, let me just stop you a second. I know I don't, but I do believe that built into our psyche, our learning of the Bible, whether you are Adventist or you're whatever type of denomination, we have that somewhat sympathies. And I know you'd say Israelis and Israelites, but I would have liked this discussion. What I was going to come to is the economic issues, that war is going to push up oil prices.
It already started.
And it's going to push up more. And that in terms of what will happen with banking and loans and interest rates and all this other stuff, and the recovery from our past recessions and so on we've had around the world, they're going to be thwarted by this new development. Ukraine.
I was going to point the discussion to the statement of St. Vincent and the Grenadines released last week.
Yeah.
Just for some wider context, because all of those things were mentioned. But again, let me just say that I grew up Seventh-day Adventist, and Seventh-day Adventist does not preach the doctrine of Israelites. No. So no, I never learned that. As a matter of fact, I learned that based on the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. We were all given that mandate to be called his sons and daughters of God, children of God, so that we are all spiritual Israelites, not the landmass in the Middle East. So I never grew up learning
And that's the teaching we all Israeli Jews.
But you may be right. You may be right about that. But the sympathy still exists. Okay.
Not on my
get to the point I want to make.
All right.
Because the point I really want to make is going back to the fact that a lot of what we're discussing, especially in the Western media, gives the impression that all of this started on October 7th. And so Israel is defending and retaliating to what happened on October 7th. Yeah. When in truth, in fact, this has been going on for decades. Israel has been carpet bombing Gaza for decades, doing what they're doing in the West Bank for decades.
Since the 1900s.
No. Now, mind you, Doc, our history says that there was a people, indigenous to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, called the Garifuna. And settlers came to occupy. And what did those people do? They resisted, they fought, they ambushed, they killed. Because it was part of a resistance of a people that wanted to take over their land and wipe them out.
Yeah.
And we celebrate that history.
Yeah.
We celebrate it and we call it a resistance. Yeah. And even though there was such a robust resistance, you know what happened? They were wiped out, murdered. Genocide was committed against those people on this island. Yeah. So that we have very little of them left here in St. Vincent and Grenadines. And all observers, all unbiased observers are telling you that at the rate at which Israel is going in response to the Palestinian resistance, which has taken some very horrible ways, murdering children, murdering innocent civilians and so on. In response to that, Israel seems to be on its way to committing genocide because it's committing war crimes against the people. And we are standing silent and we are saying Israel has the right to defend itself. We are saying, oh, but what Hamas did we condemn it on October 7th? Oh, but Hamas has a stated goal of wiping out the Jews.
But does Hamas represent the people of the country, though?
Not everybody.
But here's the other
to an
side.
extent.
Defense
extent.
Minister, Army General, all said we're flattening Gaza. But nobody's talking about that.
Yes. To an extent, Hamas has risen. They have a social arm and they have a military arm. And the social arm, they do feeding, they do this. And I mean, people in occupation basically need a whole set of service, and they've been doing that in spite of the blockades and aid car coming in, no electricity, gas has run out there, and so on. I agree with you, Sian. I wonder how these people will survive. However, what I'm concerned about now is will Hezbollah join the fight? Will other Arab states chip in? Maybe they won't, but.
And we're hoping that, but instead of brokering for peace, Doc, what do you have? You have Lindsey Graham and a bunch of senators going to the Middle East and saying, listen, you got to wipe out Hamas. You got to wipe out this. I'm watching Iran. We're coming after Iran. How does that advance peace in the Middle East?
But that's not America's agenda.
Well, you see, no, they will always have the boogeyman. But once again, I am always worried. I'm not even sure that it isn't, because the American president, senators, American presidential candidates have all adopted the same rhetoric that they support Israel 100%. Israel, Joe Biden had said he's not even going to urge restraint on Netanyahu. You have, as I said, Lindsey Graham talking about bombing Iran. You have Nikki Haley said finish them. I mean, all those responses are wrong.
Hello?
My question is, knowing what we know now, I don't understand. It's confusing to me. How can you support something like that?
Who?
Well,
Israel. How can you support Israel?
That is the question. And I think for the first time, the Israeli media campaign is actually getting serious pushback, and people are seeing the other side of the story. Even though from all reports, there was a brilliant program yesterday on Al Jazeera. I can't remember the name of the show, but they did a half an hour program to show how the Western media is actively censoring certain hosts, taking them off radio, people losing the jobs simply because the question is, well, do you know that while an American can burn an American flag and question the Constitution and protest, if that same American does that to Israel, they could lose their work.
You know, talking all thing in one, right? People have a lot of negative things to say about social media, pros and cons, but it's because of platforms like TikTok where you get the other sides of these stories.
But I think there's another factor, Sian. I think going back, as I mentioned, thousands of years, there's been also an anti-Islamic viewpoint that comes in. And the Jewish faith is accepted to some degree, even though it is not Christianity, but it is not, as in some people's eyes, as far gone as the Islamic. That's why you see certain priests had burned Qurans and all that kind of stuff and so forth. But there's a fear that going back 1,000 years, where the Islamic Ottoman Empire and all this other stuff would have come through and in themselves would have done number, or ISIS as it was being created, and their views and so yeah.
Final thing I wanted to before I go, and I want you guys to think about this. Do you see any symmetry in the way the world, the Western powers, treat the issue of Palestine and Israel to the way the world treats the issue of the Holocaust and slavery?
Slavery more so. I think slavery more so because.
Well, no, but I'm saying, look at the symmetry. If you criticize the way Israel is dealing with Palestine, you're anti-Semitic. They bully you and so forth. They try to silence you. If you talk about the Holocaust, you don't dare talk anything about the Holocaust. But when you talk about slavery, it's you forget about that man.
Okay.
That don't happen how long? Where we should apologize.
Yeah, forget about it and move on.
Listen, exactly. Let's forget about it and move on. They never stop apologizing for the Holocaust, even though they're paid. But slavery,
they got reparations too now.
Whole different story. They refuse to even make an apology when it comes to the way black people are treated. Do you see a symmetry? Just think about that.
Same thing. Before you go, Sion, did you look at the interview with Bassem Youssef?
Oh yes.
There's I love that. You should watch it if you didn't get to see
interview.
it.
They also listen. So many interviews are there. You have James Snyder, who was a labor advisor. He's also, and he's Jewish. He's also doing a lot of interviews and so on, showing another side, bringing the culpability of the UK, because as he says, it's easy to condemn Hamas, but because what Israel is doing is with the help of UK bombs and UK guns and UK bullets and UK money, then there's a fair to now condemn what Israel is doing. And there are lots of interviews out there, and I really hope that people see the other side of the equation. Not to say that you must agree, but at least now you are getting a more balanced view of no longer just Israeli perspective bombarding you, but you're also now seeing other journalists saying, no, we have to tell the other side of the story as well.
But see, just before you go, and I'm going to throw a fastball at you. Do you think that even though the repression and the blockades and everything like that, the suffering that the people of the Gaza Strip has been under, that the justification to go into Israel, and where, if those are the figures, 12 plus 100 people were killed, 200 and something people were kidnapped, maybe as a human shield and so forth eventually. But do you think that there's a justification for that? And having that happen, do you think that the response, any response at all by Israel, is justified? Whether it's a mass destruction where it's destroying Gaza, or do you think there should be any response at all to Israel? Don't you think that they would feel, if they don't respond, therefore other entities would do that in the North Bank or the West Bank or in the northern part and so
But
forth.
Sian, hold on, because we
One
had
of
a
the
stick.
things,
Sian,
Yes, we got
No, I
past
have
that
to run.
time.
Because I have a press conference before.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
well,
Okay.
I'm glad you quit. I'm glad I didn't give you the time to answer that question there. Because diplomatically, I'm not gonna put you on the spot. That guy says a fastball.
I have to say that international law, even in self-defense, has one word and one word that is repeated: proportionality. And if you think that what happened on October 7th, the response of Israel in its defense by killing almost 5,000 Palestinians, half of whom are women and children, is proportionate, then there's your answer. Have a good one.
have a good one, Sian. If it's one morning, I 100% on Sian's side is today. But the time is now 9:01, and it's time for
not gonna
Eastern
agree with
Caribbean
I'm not going to agree with Sian.
Central Bank.
I'm not going to
foreign
agree with Sian
exchange
this
rate.
morning.
But we have to come back and we'll talk about
All right,
it.
okay.
But it's time for the bank rate, sponsored by Bank of St. Vincent.
No, we're moving on.
Yeah, we gotta move on. So if anything has to be said, you gotta do it now.
And the Grenadines.
I done.
Brick by brick.